There we go. Okay, so I tried this live one before and it said that comments weren't supported on a private video, which I thought I had done it public, but now it's working. Okay, so we are live. Yes, we are live on a Sunday afternoon. I told you summer was going to be crazy. My older daughters have been gone for the past few weeks doing all sorts of stuff. So this week they are back. So my husband and I are going to be going somewhere tomorrow together. So excuse the noise in the background. I am at church. So I just figured however many can join. Hey, Sarah, however many can join, that's as many that can join. And it is what it is. I still get the same amount of views if I premiere it, if I have it live on a Sunday, whatever. So excuse my baby, food stuff. I'm assuming that's from Hannah. So excuse my marks that I have all over me. But Sarah actually gave me this topic. Hey, Ashley. Good to see you on a Sunday. Sarah actually gave me this topic and I thought it was a good one. And it's just about kind of geared towards younger moms. And it goes along the lines of comparison. And that is why I named it the Joy Thief, because I do believe that comparison is the thief of joy. And I wanted to start out by reading one. I'm going to be reading, since this is just kind of last minute, I don't have much of an outline thrown together. I'm just kind of speaking from the heart today. I figured I would also read a couple of my blog posts that are written from the heart. As I often say, I'm a better writer than a speaker. So I like to read some of the stuff I have written. When I write, anyone that is a writer knows that every blog post that you do, everything that you write from the heart is a work of art from you. And you sit down, and sometimes it takes hours to write up a blog post. And it is definitely time consuming. And that's why I think AI drives me so nuts, because it makes me really mad that there is AI out. I'm going to turn up my volume here a little bit. Oh no, that was the monitor. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Tell me if I just messed something up. I hope I didn't. Okay. Tell me if I just messed something up. But that's why AI drives me nuts, because I know how much work goes into a blog post and how much work goes into writing. And so with people just using the AI for computer for like, not computer, they're using the computer. They're using it for college classes and they're using it to write blogs, and it really drives me nuts. And once again, my voice is fine until I start talking, and then it gets raspy. Okay, so let's go into the topic. It is going to be about comparison today, and this is specifically geared towards younger moms. So I'm going to start out by reading an article I wrote on May 8th, 2019. So it's been a few years ago. So if you've read it, I apologize, but this is for those that maybe haven't read it or are new to my show or my blog. So it is called The Joy Thief. From the time that Claire was a child, she dreamt of being a mommy. She would play with her stuffed animals and baby dolls for hours, rocking them, singing to them, and putting them to bed. She loved dreaming of the day when she would walk down the aisle, marry her Prince Charming, and have her first baby. She wanted nothing else in life. Much to her delight, everything went just as she had planned. She got married young, and with stars in her eyes and joy in her heart, she entered married life with high hopes and expectations, as we all do, don't we? Imagine her and her husband's delight when, just a month after her wedding day, she took a pregnancy test and a positive showed up within minutes. She couldn't be happier. Life was perfect, and nothing could take away the joy that she had. 9 months to the day after her wedding, Claire became a mommy. As she gazed into the perfect face of her firstborn son, she felt deep, overwhelming love wash over her. Nothing could take away her joy. Nothing. So she thought. Reality hit as soon as Claire came home from the hospital. The baby boy cried all the time. He was asleep the whole day, and then he was awake the whole night. Claire's milk came in. She was engorged and in pain. Her baby wouldn't eat, so she had to pump and try to feed him the milk in a tiny bottle. She had to have blood tests every day because he was jaundiced and it wasn't getting better. She was tired and sore and a little bit in shock. This is not what she had imagined. The blog she read never shared this side of motherhood. All she had read had made her think that breastfeeding was going to be the most natural, wonderful thing in the world. No one told her that a baby born a month early might just want to sleep all the time and never want to eat. No one told her about the engorgement and the constant letdowns and the nursing pads and the pain and the struggle that breastfeeding would be. She started comparing herself to other mothers. What was her problem? Susie from the wildly popular mommy blog didn't go through all this trouble. Something must be wrong with her. She felt a little bit of her joy slipping away. Then Claire got pregnant again, only 4 months after her first child. She now had a fussy 4-month-old and nausea and sickness on top of that. She felt awful most of the time, yet she still had to cook and clean and nurse and take care of a baby. She read of the other moms in the same situation. They were handling it with grace, while she felt like she was falling apart. Surely something was really wrong with her. She felt a little more joy slipping away. A few years into her marriage, Claire was pregnant with child number 3. She felt like she muddled through each day, every task mundane to her. No one told her or prepared her for the tedious tasks of being a stay-at-home mom to all these little people. She felt like all she did all day long was wipe snotty noses, change diapers, cook, clean, go to sleep, clean up vomit, wipe some more noses, and do it all over again the next day. Everything she read about being a stay-at-home mom was about the blessings of staying home, how joyful they were to be able to stay home, how rosy life was, how perfect their little family was. Claire looked around her house. She looked at the strewn papers everywhere, the toys, the crackers, the dust, and the grime. She couldn't even keep her house clean, much less her kids. What was wrong with her? Compared to other moms, she was really failing, and even more joy slipped away. Life continued on. It was hard, so hard. Nothing had prepared her for the sheer exhaustion that motherhood brings. Nothing prepared her for the long, grueling hours of being up with a puking child or grocery shopping with 4 little kids. Nothing prepared her for the mommy guilt. Night after night, she would lay staring at the ceiling, knowing that she should be sleeping during the hours the kids were, but feeling crushed by despair and guilt that plagued her heart and mind. What if she was messing her kids up? What if she wasn't enough? And surely she wasn't enough. I mean, everyone on social media had it together so much more than her. They were happy and beautiful homes and perfectly groomed children. No dirty houses there. Everything looked pristine and spotless, and she could even smell the aroma of cookies through the phone screen. She was such a failure. And so the joy slipped away. Gone was the sparkle in her eyes. Gone was the stardust and the happy feelings and the happiness that used to flood her heart. Gone was the joy, and she hated herself for it. Until the day came when she was reading through Isaiah. Even with Bible reading, she felt like a failure because she didn't even manage to get that done every day. She tried, oh, how she tried. But between homeschooling and cleaning and cooking and being everything for her kids, she often failed at finding time to open her Bible. But somehow she had managed to make it to Isaiah in her Bible reading, and she stumbled across Isaiah 40:11. And it reads, "He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young." Claire read it again and again, and suddenly a spark lit in her heart. The verse reached into her very soul and breathed life into it. God saw, God understood. He knew that mamas needed to be led gently. God understood how very hard the job of being a mama was. Claire thought back over her life as a mama. She remembered how, in each situation where she had lost a little bit of her joy, it was always when she was comparing herself to someone else. She never felt good enough compared to Susie down the street. She never measured up to Diana. She always felt bad when she saw pictures of Laura's kids. Her house was never clean enough, never cute enough, never decorated enough. She was never thin enough. So many moms she knew lost the weight as soon as they had the baby. She gained 10 pounds with each pregnancy. She sighed and then shook her head. Why was she always comparing herself to other moms? God said in Isaiah that he would gently lead those with young. He didn't say, "I'll lead those that have it all together," or "I'll lead those who are perfect at this mother thing." No, he said he would gently lead those that are with young. He sees every mama, and he was going to lead all of them gently. Claire's joy didn't magically return after reading that verse. but it woke her up. She was done comparing herself to other moms. Sure, she was overwhelmed and stressed at times. Sure, her house wasn't perfect and her kids were dirty a lot of the time, and she felt like a failure more often than not. But her husband was happy. Her kids were happy. She was living her childhood dream, and that made her happy. And when Claire's 2-year-old brought her dandelions, a little bit of joy came back. When her son told her he loved her and wrote her a sweet note, more joy flooded her heart. When she tucked all of her babies in bed every night and watched them sweetly snore, even more joy came back. But it wasn't until Claire stopped comparing herself to every other mom that she had stars in her eyes once again and joy in her heart. For you see, comparison is the thief of joy. It peers into the windows of our soul. It knows what we lack in, and it makes us focus only on those things. It tells us we aren't good enough or brave enough or smart enough to be a good mom. It tries stealing away all of the joy that once used to flood our hearts. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's also a liar, because honestly, none of us are perfect. None of us have it all together. We all have dust in our homes. We all have dirty kids sometimes. We all cook a frozen pizza on hectic nights. We all yell when we shouldn't, and we pick fights with our husbands, even though we know it's stupid and petty. We're all broken people living in a broken world. We battle daily against our flesh and our laziness and our insecurities. The human race is and always has been pretty much the same. I know Claire well because I am Claire. And it wasn't until I decided that I was done comparing myself to other women that I finally started getting my joy back. I was the starry-eyed bride and the young mother. I was also the mother on edge of a burnout. I had to firmly tell myself that I was done letting comparison steal my joy. No more would he be my joy thief. I'm still not perfect, nor do I have it all together, but I no longer compare myself to other moms. I am who I am. My children aren't perfect and they don't have it all together, but they're mine. And I love them fiercely. And I find joy, oh, so much joy in being their mama. So I hope you liked that one. Like I said, that was written on May 8th, 2019. And like I said, I had a lot of expectations and things going into it. I don't know if it's the generation before me that painted a rosy picture of something that was not. And maybe back then, I do remember that what went on in the home stayed in the home. So what I'm saying is if any family had any problems at all, it was never discussed. It was never talked about. Failings were never talked about. And so going into marriage, I had very high expectations for how my kids would be. They would be perfectly behaved. I mean, I remember my husband and I on one of our first dates, we were like, we're going to have 10 kids and they're going to be perfect. And boy, God was laughing at us in heaven and decided to send us kids that were very strong-willed, which all of us have strong-willed kids. All of us have strong-willed kids. It's shaping that will and showing them that living for Christ is the best life. That's the purpose. But little did we know at 20 years old. And so I don't know if it was something that was just not talked about when I was growing up, but I did. And I grew up as the oldest of 5. So I knew there were hairy moments in life, and I knew our family wasn't perfect, but yet I had this misconception that if you married right and you had a good foundation and you had, you waited till marriage for the physical relationship and you went into it with all your ducks lined up in a row, that it was just going to be somehow like easier or something. I don't know. That's not the case though. And so I found myself comparing myself to a lot of the well-known stay-at-home mommy bloggers that I knew. And this stuff 20 years ago was not talked about. The mental part of having kids, the emotional part was not talked about when I was a young mom. And I just felt like I was a failure most days as a young mom. Now looking back, I do feel like my generation has become better about admitting our shortcomings and admitting that we don't have it all together. And I feel like people are striving for a more authentic life, especially when it comes to social media. And we've seen in the last 20 years the damage that the image of perfection has done on social media. And because of this, we have things like Instagram girls like Gabby Patetti or whatever her name is, that was living this fake life where she appeared to be living this life that everyone wants, traveling around the world in this van. And then she gets strangled by her boyfriend, who later kills himself. So, I feel like people are searching for a more authentic face to these things. So I've always tried to be authentic in my writing, in my approach to young moms. And I do feel like comparison is the number one joy thief that you will experience. And I have more writing on my blog. If you haven't read it, go check it out at gentlyledsisters.com. And then if you just go down to the blog part, there are more. I might end it by reading the blog post that I wrote to young moms, since this one is geared towards young moms. But Sarah I'm stumbling over my words because I'm multitasking. I'm looking for that last blog post as I'm talking. But we had a cookout at our house this past Monday. And she said, maybe moms need to hear, maybe moms like me that had lots of little kids, and they went to July 4th outings, and they just spent the whole outing just watching their kids, running around after their kids. And I will say, Amos was cracking me up because he's not mine, right? He was cracking me up that day because he was literally making one mess and going and making another, like around the house. He would spill a cup of juice and then go make another mess in another room. And then he would leave that mess and go make a mess in another room. So he was just a tornado that day. It was one thing after another. And Sarah was running around, and it's exhausting. And you see older moms that have, first of all, older kids that can help. You see older moms and you feel like a failure. Like, why do they look so at peace and so content? And why are they that way? And, they have 8 kids and I only have 3, and I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And it's never good to compare yourself with other moms. First off, you just have to stop. And I fell into that trap as a young mom. I fell into the trap of comparing myself to Susie the blogger, and comparing myself to maybe even ladies in the church that had older kids. One of my people that I looked up to the most, her last child, her 5th child, just actually got married a couple weeks ago. I remember thinking that with her, like, she has all this wisdom and she's got it all together and her home life is perfect. And I've just got to be like that. Like that was, but as you get older and you become closer to people, you realize they're not as perfect as you think they are. We all have shortcomings and we all have faults in our home. And yes. Okay. So I also have a blog post on there, things I would have told my 20-year-old self. And that's all about being a mom. And that's a good one for younger moms to read. And then He Gently Leads. I have that one on there, kind of talking about, and you kind of saw with my post about Claire, that verse has spoken to me, the verse that our entire group, Facebook group, Gently Led Sisters group, our channel, my blog post, that's what it's all based off, is that verse. So no one's kids or home is perfect. As much as you want to think they are, they're not. Okay, here's the other post. I found it. But I wanted to just talk about some comparison and these things that we should not do. And the Bible even talks about comparing ourselves among ourselves. They are not wise. Let me look that verse up real quick, because that is such a good verse for everyone to pay attention to, Baptists included, because Baptists, we really can be quite judgy with each other. And judgment, and I wrote a post about this on Facebook not too long ago, a week or two ago, just talking about, watch out for the very, very judgmental ones in churches. The ones that gossip, the ones that backbite the most, the ones that are down on everyone but themselves. Usually the ones that are the most judgmental are the ones that are most miserable in what they're doing. And the reason they're judgmental is they're not fully convinced in their mind that their beliefs are even theirs. And so they look down on other people whose beliefs or standards or convictions don't measure up to theirs. And they nitpick them. They nitpick. And so the Bible talks about comparing ourselves among ourselves. And I'm going to look that up. Comparing ourselves among ourselves, KJV. There we go. For we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. And it goes on to say, but we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which God hath distributed to us, a measure to reach even unto you. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reached not unto you, for we are come as far as to you also in preaching the gospel of Christ, not boasting of things without our measure, that is, of other men's labors, but having hope when your faith is increased, that we shall be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly, to preach the gospel in the regions beyond you, and not to boast in another man's line of things made ready to our hand. But I really like verse 12, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 12, for we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. So it's saying that it's not wise to compare each other to each other. Our measure or our goal should be Jesus Christ. So until we are all up to that standard, then it's best just not to look at other people's faults, look at other people's shortcomings, and compare ourselves to other people's. But in this matter of marriage, I see a lot of comparison when it comes to marriage. And no one's marriage is perfect. And everyone's marriage takes work. And we're all going to have areas where your husband is your husband. Someone else's husband is not your husband. You are that man's wife. You are not anyone else's wife. So as such, as a wife, you only submit to one man on this entire earth, and that is your husband. No other man has the right to expect things of you, to demand things of you, to tell you what to do, what not to do. Your husband is the only one who is supposed to make the final decisions in your home, not a pastor, not a pope, not a priest. Your husband is the head of your home. Obviously, God is supposed to be the head of your home and then your husband, but no one's authority usurps your husband's. So that is the biblical model, that we see outlined in the Bible. Husbands be the head of the wife. As such, there's going to be some things that work for my marriage that don't work for your marriage. Oftentimes this comes down to even comparison with things that maybe my husband is okay with, someone else's husband wouldn't be. And it's never good to get discontent in your marriage. Well, he lets her do this and he lets her do that, because every man is different. Some men are a little bit needier than other men. And as such, you should adjust to that. My husband and I are both pretty independent people. And so that being said, we do things independently of each other a lot. He'll go on trips, and not like trips for fun per se, but church related things that speaking engagements, or like when he went to Israel, I will go sometimes, for planned things, camps. We'll be away from each other for a week. I know not this week, but next I'll be driving to West Virginia by myself, and he'll be joining me later in the week. So we're pretty independent. That works great for our marriage. We're both firstborns, and I think personality plays into it. Also, he just has a lot of confidence and trust in me, and I do the same with him. And so that works well in our marriage. It might not work for yours. Your husband might not want you taking kids and driving 10 hours away to a different state, And so it's never good to compare your life with mine, because my husband might be higher maintenance in another area that yours is not. My husband is happy if I throw a slab of bacon into the air fryer and I'm making BLTs. Maybe yours wants a 3-course meal, there could be different things. Like my husband won't eat cheese. Maybe your husband will. Not eating cheese Does make it a little difficult when it comes to some dishes. So I have to work around that, you know. My husband has very high expectations when it comes to, and always has from the day we got married, church attendance or being at church, not missing church, being there on time, being in my seat, very, very high expectations for that. Maybe you wouldn't be able to handle that, so there's all different things. All that to say, every marriage is different. And it's never wise to compare husbands with husbands or compare different methods that work in a relationship with someone else's. Now, when it comes to all things marriage, I can give you tips, I can give you advice, but at the end of the day, I'm not in control of your home, your husband is, and you should submit to him and do what he wants you to. And yes, I know submit is a horrible word nowadays, but it's biblical. It's in there. And I'm not going to apologize for what the Bible says. The Bible is timeless and it will always continue to hold truths that are not popular. So it is what it is. Your home, like even where you live, I see a lot of comparison in this. I know it's meant to be funny and just different Facebook posts and things about people picking on other states or, come to my state. It's so gorgeous and it's so beautiful. But I have noticed a discontent when it comes to this lately, especially since COVID. My husband and I were talking about this, especially since COVID. We have noticed that it is so easy to sell a house nowadays. It's so easy to just put a for sale sign in the yard and 3 weeks later, you're done. Fiona is on the chat and she was telling me about how in Ireland, it's so different in Ireland and America, because in Ireland, it's a huge ordeal to sell a house. America, it's not, it's not a big deal at all. So because of this, I feel like, especially since COVID, everyone is like, the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. So I'm going to move to Florida because DeSantis is there. Or I'm going to move to Texas because they can open carry, or, whatever it is. Pick whatever option you want. But I do believe it is a mindset, and we're passing this on to our children too, when we're constantly moving from one place to another. My husband and I never wanted to do that. We wanted to try to raise our kids in one church for the most part. So we did. It's my older ones, Allie and Up, have only been in 2 churches their entire life. My son is 21. He's only been in 2, Lighthouse, where we were sent out of to start Liberty, and then Liberty, and that's it. So those are the only churches he's been in. He's about to get married and move to Clinton, Illinois, where he will be a member of that church. And that will only be his 3rd church. And hopefully he'll stay there until he maybe moves back here one day. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All that to say, discontentment is on the rise, especially when it comes to the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and people get discontent where they live. I found out through COVID that pretty much all states are the same. All states shut down. All states enforced masks. All states did that. So all states across the board are the same in my mind. And you can make a home wherever you live. It doesn't matter if it's in California. It doesn't matter if it's in Illinois. It doesn't matter if it's in New York, the 3 top worst states, right? Worst states. It doesn't matter if it's in Florida. It doesn't matter if it's in Texas. It doesn't matter if it's in Indiana or Michigan. You can make a life wherever God has you. So I would, this comparison of homes, whether it's the size of the home, the quality of the home, just really find joy where you live. Look for the good things in your home. Make your home pleasant. Paint is not expensive. I get decorations from Goodwill all the time. One of my favorite walls is plates that I bought for 75 cents, 50 cents at Goodwill. And I Gorilla Glued a paper clip on the back, and I have a plate wall. That's one of my favorite, and it probably costs $5 to do. That's one of my favorite walls in my whole house. So yes, home, definitely comparison can take away a lot of joy, whether that comes to yard or no yard. I absolutely love where I live. And I know if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you notice I post things with my chickens all the time. I post things of my fields and my beautiful sunsets, and it's glorious. I love where I live. By the world's standards, it is not a lavish home at all. In fact, when we bought it, we've done a lot of fixing up since we bought it. But even now, I mean, my kitchen, it was completely redone 2 years ago, but it has a big old, about this big. Everyone that came over Monday in Chanello, they can verify, and the kids picked at it and made it bigger. So it's probably like that big now. It has a whole paint spot missing on one of my newly done walls 2 years ago. And it is what it is. I'm not going to panic when everyone comes over, because then I would never have anyone over. 2 years ago, when I had my broken cabinets, I remember Karen Rodriguez actually asked me, I was talking to her about how I would love to have people over, but I don't feel like my home is nice enough. And some of my cabinets have broken doors, and there's one whole cabinet, like the whole door is off. And she said, Cassandra, do you think when people think about coming over to your house and fellowshipping with you and your family, they're going to remember the broken cabinet door, or they're going to remember you extending the hand of fellowship and the good time that they had talking with you? I was like, you know what? They're going to remember the fellowship. And that's always stuck with me. So I think of that now when I look at my big old paint spot that's being picked, all the paint's being picked off by the kids. I have to paint that whole wall again. I wanted to before the O'Hagans come over for Tommy's wedding, but this summer, I don't know if it's going to happen. So if not, that paint spot will be there and it will be bigger. And, it is what it is. Since then, the last 2 years, we've had over more people in our home. We have people over all the time. We have more people over in our home than we have in the last 12 years of being here, probably. And I often refer to my home as Grand Central Station now, because there's always people going through there. You know what? It's always getting messy. It's always getting dirty. My paint spot is getting bigger. That's being picked apart. And it's wonderful, because we're surrounded by friends. We're surrounded by family. We're surrounded by those who love us. And some of the reason it's Grand Central Station is because we have significant others that are now in our lives, and we're getting to know them. And then my son's getting married in 6 weeks. And so it's good things that are happening. And so you never want to fall into this trap where you don't have people over because of how your home looks. I would say I don't go into someone's home and be like, oh my goodness, it's dirty. Oh my goodness, look at the baseboards. Oh my goodness, look at the ceiling, the cobwebs. Oh my goodness, look at that. Oh my goodness. No, I just enjoy the people that live there. I enjoy the fellowship. I enjoy the talking. I enjoy being with them. I enjoy knowing that I have friends. So keep that mindset when you're thinking, do I really want to have people over? Because my house isn't the greatest. It does not matter what the house looks like. It matters who's in the house. So our kids, we can definitely fall into this comparison game with our children. And I know I did. I feel as if it's harder for those in ministry, because there are oftentimes a lot of people that do expect more out of your family and do expect more out of your kids. And I realize that as a pastor's family, we are to be an example when it comes to different things, especially if we're going to be giving parenting advice. We should be able to raise good kids. We should be able to exhibit methods that have worked, I guess, if you want to say, if all of our kids are going into the world as soon as they turn 18, there might be pause for concern. I understand that. But you have to remember the purpose in raising kids. Are you raising kids so that people can look at you and be like, my, what perfect little soldiers you have? Or are you raising kids so that they will be functioning members of society when they get older? They will love the Lord. They will follow in the path of loving the Lord, raising their family in church, following his word, following his commandments. What's your purpose behind raising your kids? Is it just to make you look good? Or is it to bring honor and glory to Christ? So you got to keep those in perspective. And oftentimes in churches, when you start comparing yourself among yourselves again, and you start being judgmental of everyone else's kid, that kid had to be taken out 3 times during the service. That kid won't stop crying. That kid threw 5 fits today. If you're keeping track, that's a big red flag. Because first of all, God's going to humble you. If you think you have it all together and you think you have perfect children, God's going to humble you. And secondly, it's not exhorting the brethren when you have this persona of, I am perfect and my kids are perfect and they never mess up. And then everyone else is going to be feeling like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I a failure? Why are my kids not turning out this way. Why aren't my kids perfect soldiers? And why don't, my kids call me my Lord and Master or something? That's an extreme, but sometimes I think some parents are like that. They really do expect their kids to treat them like the master of the home, and to constantly, be perfect little soldiers who never mess up. And what's probably most likely going to happen is the kids are going to flee for the hills as soon as they get old enough to realize that there's another life out there. So you want to raise them in such a life in your home, in such a happy life, and such a happy home that they want to continue on in that style or that method of with, child rearing with their own families. So you don't want to make it such a hell on earth in your home that they want to escape it as soon as they turn 18. So this comparison can also go on in things of the church. And this is specifically for younger moms, just in the fact that I feel like when you're younger, you're more apt to be discontent. As you get older, your priorities kind of start falling into place, and you kind of start realizing, first off, you realize that you cannot compare yourself to other moms. Number one, hands down, you cannot compare yourself to other wives. Yes, you can glean advice and you can glean knowledge from others, and you can strive to be better, but the goal should always be being like Jesus Christ, not being like Martha Stewart with her cooking, not her personal life, not like, being like Betty Crocker or, whoever it might be, Debbie Pearl, I don't know, not like, being as dutiful or meek and quiet as her. God gave us all unique personalities. And if we were all cookie cutter people, that would be pretty boring. So your husband also fell in love with you for your personality. He didn't fall in love with you because you're adapting to have my personality, or you're adapting to have Debbie Pearl's personality, or whoever the big guru out there on families, all things families is. He fell in love with you because you are you. So just keep that in mind as well. But yeah, this comparison thing of churches. For us, it didn't matter how big or how small. We wanted to be in the same church, and we wanted to raise our kids the majority of their lives in that church, and we wanted to be all in. So I would commend you to whatever church that you are in, whether that is a small church, whether that's a big church, whether that's a church that lines up, completely 100% with everything you believe in, whether there's some differences in what you believe in. We fellowship all the time with people that are different than us. There are so many small doctrinal things. Not every preacher, first of all, in this universe is ever going to line up 100% on doctrine. There's always little differences here and there when it comes to doctrine. And I feel like if people could just learn to get along with each other, even if there's a matter of small disagreement on doctrine, that's more exhibiting Christ's love. Because it's real easy to love people that are exactly like you. It's a little bit harder when you got some disagreements on the table, and that's where you can exhibit disagreeing, but with love. So, with church, it's really easy to compare churches. Our church is so small, I just wish more people were involved. Well, if you want it to be that way, then you get involved. Don't compare yourself with the other church and think that the pastor, the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and we're going to be so happy if we go to this church. No. And every church has seasons. Some churches are really big, and then they go through a split, and then they're smaller, and then they get really big again, and then they're smaller, and then there's exciting times, and then there's dry times. So just learn to be content with whatever church that you're in. Also, I know this is a big one with younger moms, is activities and hobbies. Realizing that there are seasons to life, and that my season is not your season. A lot of younger moms look at me and they just want to do everything I'm doing. So not only do I homeschool, run a home, I'm a pastor's wife, I also teach, 15 to 20 hours of piano during the school year every week. And there's a lot of other things I do. Well, you can't do that right now. If you try doing that, first of all, you would end up in an insane asylum because you'd be driving yourself crazy. Second of all, you just can't do it when you have little kids. When you have little kids, you are the full-time primary caregiver, hands down. I did not start my music studio until 3 years ago. And that was when Abby was old enough to help out watching the girls. And so what she would do when she was still in school, she would get up very early and she would finish her school and she would be done. That's the beauty of homeschooling. And she's an early riser anyways. So she would be done very early with school. And then I would get the kids started in school and then I would teach and she would watch Kelly. It was back when I started was when Kelly was about 1. And so she would watch Kelly. Then Hannah came along, but things got a little bit more hairy, but she was still able to do that as well. Now, if I ever had another baby, I might need to take a break, for a couple years from piano teaching, just because that would be a lot on anyone's plate with 3 littles. But with the 2 littles, it's still manageable. But I did not start that. I did not start teaching piano in general until Lana's 9, so 8 years ago. So for the first 13 to 14 years of our marriage, I did not do anything outside the home. Nothing. I had hobbies that I would do at midnight when the kids were in bed, like writing. This channel, is another hobby that I have. But it was 13 or 14 years before I did anything as far as bringing in extra income. And that's just because it wasn't my season of life. So for the first 12, 13, 14, 15 years of having kids, you need to focus all your attention on them. You're not going to have time for outside activities unless it's, once a week, once every other week, something like that. And that is hard, I think, for younger moms because they do want an outlet. Now, I'm going to say I did have some outlets. I did have some hobbies. First of all, I did join a gym when I had younger kids. That was kind of my needed therapy. And so I would get up at like 6 a.m. I would go work out at Curves, and then I would come home and my husband would go to work then. And that really provided a much needed outlet. I've always written. I've always kind of had a blog for the last, I would say 10 years or so. One of my blogs was like on this homeschool blogging site, and I don't even know where that went, but I had a lot of writing stuff on there. I ended up shutting that down, or the site shut down or something. I can't remember, but I've always written. And so that's always been an outlet for me. I've always read. Reading is one of my passions. I love to read. So I always have had things like that. I'm not talking about that per se. I'm talking about different things to bring in money, side incomes, something that you're going to have to devote a lot of hours of time to. Like I said, with my music studio, I'm devoting at least 20 hours a week doing that. Besides, when it comes down to invoices and keeping track of all that, sending music, scheduling, all that. I would say between Gently Led Sisters and my music academy, it's about 20 extra hours a week. And how do I do that? Because I have older kids, because I've got daughters that are cleaning the rooms of the house. I have daughters that know how to keep a house clean, and my house stays clean because of that. The ladies here know that I struggle when my older ones are gone because I'm doing everything. So I have all these irons in the fire and I'm still trying to keep them going. But then I've got all the extra stuff like washing the dishes and cleaning the homes and doing all the cleaning the home and doing all the cooking and taking care of the chickens and everything else I do. I'm doing that on top of all my irons that I have in the fire. So that can be really difficult when my older ones are gone. So as your kids get older, you're going to find out that you're going to get more and more freedom, because it does get easier in that aspect. Now, raising kids is always hard. I have adult kids, and that's a whole different ballpark when it comes to bigger problems that you're handling. It takes a lot more mental, I think, mental battles when you have older ones, and a lot more time as far as like a lot of communication when you have older kids. The younger kids, they just have to listen to you, and that's not a problem. But with the older kids, it's, leading by example, explaining things or whatever. So yeah, just remember, don't compare yourself and what season that you're in to another mom who's in a completely different season. I can do a lot more than younger moms. And so don't look at my life and as a young mom, try to have all the irons in the fire that I do, because number one, you're going to burn out. And number two, it's just not feasible. You're not going to be able to do it because there's not enough of you to go around. When you have lots of little kids, you have to be there 100% of the time. You have to be fully engaged. You have to be the primary caregiver, especially if you're nursing or pregnant. I mean, obviously, you're the primary caregiver. So there's going to be a lot of things that I can do right now at 42 and a half years old and having adult kids and teenage kids and middle school kids than you can having 4 kids, 3 and under. That wouldn't even, unless you had some twins in there. No, there have been people that have had 4 kids, 3 and under, actually. If you have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and then a newborn. So I feel it's very stressful. It's a lot, but just remember that they are going to grow up and they will be out of the house soon. And then you will have time to pursue other hobbies and interests and side income if you need to. So just buckle up and hang on, and you will see that as they get older, it does get easier in that aspect, and you will be able to add on more hobbies and more interests, and you will be able to have more irons in the fire. So I'm going to close out by reading to all the young moms. And Titus 2:3 says, the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. So this is my article I wrote to all the young moms. Motherhood is hard. It is exhausting in every area, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It is constantly giving, 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 only to get little in return, especially if you only have little kids. Some days it's all you can do to survive. Some days you barely make it until it's time to put the kids to bed, and you do it with a sigh of relief, only to turn around to face a house in disarray. You clean for the next 2 hours, and then you nurse a fussy baby, finally lay down to sleep, and a kid wakes up puking. Yeah, it's tough. I've been a mother for almost 19 years, and now I've been a mother for 21 years. So this was written 2 years ago. I've been through every season. Pregnancy 8 times over, birth 7 times. Oh, 8 times now. I was 2 weeks away from having Hannah. Newborn stages, toddler stages, middle school stages, teenage years, and now I have almost raised 2 to adulthood. I've now raised 3 to adulthood. I currently have an adult son living in the home, about to get married, and another right on his heels. I have to say, as an older mom with older kids, it's easier now than when I first started. And I want this to be an encouragement to young moms. No mom has it all together. We all have our faults. We all have our weaknesses. We all have our strengths and strong areas. We all struggle some days. We're victorious other days. Sometimes our children are perfectly behaved little angels, and we think, hey, I finally have this thing figured out. And then the next day hits. Our house looks like a tornado hit it. We burn all the meals. The dog runs away. The phone rings nonstop. The kids fight. We're in our pajamas the whole day, and we feel like a failure. Both scenarios are false. None of us have this thing figured out, and none of us are complete failures. When your kids are younger, you're going to feel like you can barely keep it together. You'll be pulled in a million directions every day, all day. You'll be stretched in ways you never knew were possible. You'll feel like you can't do it all, be it all, or even fake it that you are. And you don't need to fake it. Who are you trying to impress? Your Facebook friends, your Instagram friends, your real life friends? Why? Our goal should be to impress the Lord, and that's it. Do your best and leave it in God's hands. No need to put on a front, because as moms, we all know how hard it is. Motherhood is the most exhausting thing I have ever done, ever. Nothing compares, and I'm not going to pretend it's easy, but it does get easier. Let me give you some examples based off of things I've seen in my own life and am living out at this very moment. So when your kids are little, you have to do everything for them. Everything. Dress them, brush their teeth, clip their nails, give them baths, feed them, train them, discipline them. When your kids get older, they start doing stuff for you. Watching the baby so you can nap, cleaning, cooking, running errands. That's the one perk of having drivers. When your kids are younger, you're constantly disciplining and training. That in and of itself is exhausting. When your kids get older, the discipline ceases, training never does, and you're able to teach by your example, your words, and your actions. Teens might be trying to find out who they are and become more independent, but if you've done a good job at gaining their hearts when they're young, they'll bring you joy and pride as you see them blossom into adults. When your kids are younger, you have no outlets for yourself. You have to pour everything into these tiny humans. You barely have time to breathe, much less be involved in any outside activities. As your kids get older, you can branch out more. Hobbies that were a thing of the past suddenly pop up in your life again. You can have a side activity that you love to bring in extra money for fun things. The possibilities are endless. I had been a mom for 14 years before I was able to invest my time and energy into something other than child rearing. It was then that I was able to teach piano at an arts academy in town during a couple evenings when my husband was home. Before then, it was impossible, and I just accepted that. I've often been asked how I get so much done. I'm a pastor's wife, a mom of 8, a homeschooling mom, a YouTuber, a blogger, sometimes. I can't believe how long it's been since I posted a blog post. And I teach almost 20 hours of piano a week. Some call me super mom, but I scoff at that. I'm not super mom. I just have older kids. My older kids help me run the house. They all have their areas of responsibility, and they do it well for the most part. We have our stressful days where we have to work at the kinks, but for the most part, we're settled into our routine and the house runs just fine. Being a keeper at home doesn't mean you do every little thing yourself. Being a keeper at home means you're the overseer and you can delegate tasks. So here are some tips for you younger moms, and this is what we're going to close off on. Train them well when they're young, and they'll be a huge blessing as they get older. Train them to work hard. Train them to respect you and other adults. Train them in the things of the home. Train them to love church. Train them in the things of the Bible. It'll seem like that's all you do, but don't give up. You'll reap the rewards later. Number 2, this is the theme of today. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do not compare yourself to older moms. Older moms are in a different season than you. They have older kids. Don't underestimate that huge difference. You'll see as you start getting older, it's a game changer, believe me. I couldn't do 75% of the things I do without my older kids' help. Do not compare yourself to young moms who seem to be perfect and have it all together. Maybe they don't want to show their dirty sink on Facebook, but believe me, none of us have it all together. Live your life and stop worrying about the fake reality of other people's lives. Remember, someday you will have other hobbies and interests. You're in the thickest part of the battle right now. You're being drained the most and pushed the most, at least physically. There is a different kind of exhaustion as your kids grow up, mainly mental as they enter their teenage years. But when they're young, the physical exhaustion is real. Realize your limits. Don't try to do too much. And don't bemoan the fact that you don't have time for passions or interests. That day will come, believe me. Learn contentment for every season of raising kids. Learn to go with the flow. Learn to let go of the over-the-top expectations. Learn to choose your battles. Learn to be happy even amid the chaos. Learn to enjoy the smell of a newborn and the antics of childhood or toddlerhood. The days are long, but the years are short. How I am finding that out. Ask the older women for advice. Don't do it alone. We all need each other, and we can all use advice, admonition, and encouragement. You don't have to struggle in loneliness. Reach out to someone if you need to. Remember that you're doing the basics when you have little kids, and you're doing awesome. You cooked 3 meals, amazing. You bathed and dressed all of your little kids that are 5 and under. You are the super mom. You clipped their nails and washed their faces and combed their hair. Win for the day. When you have little kids, your day looks different than mine. I might teach 10 students and homeschool 4 kids and have a hot dinner on the table when my husband gets home, then leave and do a GLS show. And you might only keep the kids, 5 kids, 6 and under alive, but you know what? That's fine. We're in different seasons of life. What you didn't see was all my kids being independent learners during their homeschooling. While I was teaching piano, Abby was cooking meal for supper and the kids were cleaning the house after piano lessons so it didn't look like a complete mess when their dad got home. Our days will look different, and that doesn't make one better than the other. It's just what it is when you're in that season of life. And then number 8, one day you will sleep again. I promise you will. And you'll be able to leave the kids at home while you run errands or have your son run an errand. You'll be able to knit again or sew again or have a side business. You'll be able to sit and read for a couple of hours. It is coming, believe me. But in the meantime, hang in there. Motherhood, like I said before, is a wonderful, stressful, hard, great, amazing, stretching, growing, beautiful time. Learn to love every season. And remember, the day when you have older kids is coming. And for me, it's been a wonderful time. For now, you'll just have to trust me. But I am pretty sure that if I asked you 5 years from now, if it's gotten easier having older kids, you would agree with me. Life isn't always dirty diapers and snotty noses and bleary nights and running after toddlers. The babies grow up. Enjoy every season, because once you blink, it's gone. And that is how I wanted to end today. And it is gone. And now I have a son getting married in 6 weeks, and I've been doing a lot of reminiscing about back to that little tiny baby that used to pass out every single day until he was about 2 years old, 2 or 3. And I was thinking, I felt like that was just yesterday. And here he is, all excited to find his bride and get married. And it's a wonderful time. And it will be a wonderful time for you. So just hang in there. And remember, comparison is the joy thief. Stop comparing yourself among yourselves, and you'll be a lot happier. So have a good week. Next Monday, I will actually be in West Virginia. And then the Monday after that, I'll be at my best friend's house. So I might have to do the next couple Sundays. So we'll see what happens, but I'll see you when I see you. Have a great week.